In 1980, the world's best engineers tried to digitize the calculations of an architect who had been dead for 54 years. They failed. They had to abandon architecture software entirely and turn to the program used to design military fighter jets. Only then could they understand what this man had calculated. In the 19th century, using ropes, bags of sand, and a mirror. Gaudí didn't hide his method out of arrogance. He hid it because he knew no one would believe something so simple could work. June 1926. A man in threadbare clothes is struck by a tram on the streets of Barcelona. Nobody recognizes him. Bystanders assume he is a homeless man. 3 days later, when his identity is confirmed, Barcelona stops. Tens of thousands pour into the streets. Antoni Gaudí was buried inside the work he never finished, the work that no single generation finished alone. In this video, we'll go inside the calculations he hid, the fire that almost erased everything, and why the tallest church tower in the world was completed exactly 100 years after his death. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit like. It helps this story reach more people. In 1883, Barcelona was growing faster than it could handle. Industrialization was pulling thousands of rural workers into the city. The church wanted to answer that with a definitive symbol. The project had been commissioned to architect Francisco del Villar. Traditional Gothic, safe and predictable. Less than a year later, del Villar abandons the project over disputes with the sponsors. Antoni Gaudí was 31 years old, freshly graduated and known in Barcelona for a single relevant project, the Casa Vicens. He wasn't the first choice for the project, not the second. He was the architect available when the others said no. To understand what he proposed, we need to understand the problem that had haunted architecture for 800 years. Stone cathedrals needed buttresses, external arms that kept the walls from collapsing outward. The taller the cathedral, the heavier the roof. The heavier the roof, the more the walls wanted to give way. Buttresses held everything together, but at a cost. Gaudí called them the crutches of a deformed body. He said a cathedral that needed external support was a cathedral that had never learned to stand on its own. His proposal was to build a cathedral that held itself up from within, like a forest. Each column, a tree, each branch, a limb, transferring weight. The difference between the two approaches is the same as between a body that needs crutches and a body built to distribute its own weight. And here is the detail most people miss when they visit the Sagrada Família. These columns were drawn following the same geometry as the human femur, the strongest bone in the body, shaped by evolution to carry weight diagonally without breaking. Gaudí didn't invent this solution. He copied it from nature, then spent years trying to prove, mathematically, that it would work at a scale no one had ever attempted. The method he used to make that proof was so unlikely that when his assistants first saw it, they thought he had lost his mind. Ropes, bags of sand, a mirror, and an inversion of physics that would change architecture forever. A rope suspended between 2 points with a weight hanging from it doesn't form a straight line. It forms a curve. Mathematicians call this curve a catenary. Gaudí saw something in it that no one had seen before. It is the most efficient shape that exists for carrying load. Inverted, it becomes an arch where every single point receives only compression, never tension, no lateral stress. The weight travels straight down to the ground without pushing the walls apart. So Gaudí built an entire model on that principle. Each thread represented a column. Each weight, a real structural load. The whole atelier became a physical model of the cathedral, upside down. To see the result, he used a mirror underneath. The reflection showed exactly how the building would stand and where every force would be absorbed without a single written formula. It was Gaudí's computer, no keyboard, no screen, just physics, gravity, and geometry. The columns aren't vertical by accident. Every angle of inclination was calculated by the rope model so that the force vector travels straight down to the foundation. No deviation, no lateral stress, The 4 columns supporting the Tower of Jesus are made of red porphyry, a volcanic rock so dense it requires over 14,000 pounds per square inch of pressure to crush. Together, these 4 columns carry the equivalent weight of 12 Boeing 747s stacked on top of each other, calculated in the 19th century with ropes and sand. If you want to understand the depth of these calculations, Gaudí, The Complete Works by Taschen, is the definitive reference. Every structural diagram Gaudí left behind is documented there with the visual quality this work deserves. Link in the description. When engineers in the 1980s tried to digitize these calculations, architecture software simply crashed. They had to turn to CATIA, the program used to design the fuselage of military fighter jets. The geometric complexity of Gaudí's curves was equivalent to that of a supersonic aircraft. He was designing a cathedral with the same sophistication as a fighter jet, only he was doing it in the 19th century, but the structural calculation was only half the secret. Look at the ceiling. Those stone chalices are not decoration. Traditional stone cathedrals have 10 to 12 seconds of reverberation. Sound ricochets off the walls and becomes noise. Gaudí used the geometry of hyperboloids to break sound waves apart and distribute them gently across the nave. For those who want this universe on their own desk, the Lego Architecture Sagrada Família set number 21062 recreates the towers and structure with surprising precision, the kind of object you build once and never put back in the box. Link in the description. The same geometry that controls sound also controls light. The chalices are perforated so that light enters and expands as it descends, creating the effect of sunlight filtering through the leaves of a forest. Gaudí calculated the window angles so that sunlight travels the entire nave throughout the day, cool and blue at sunrise, warm and golden by late afternoon. Back to the columns. Every branching point follows the same mathematics as the femur. Gaudí studied anatomy to understand how nature distributes load and transferred that directly into stone. The Sagrada Família was designed to house an organ with 8,000 pipes distributed throughout the entire nave, not at a single point across the whole nave. The first analog surround sound system in history, designed in 1883 without electricity. Calculated with geometry and acoustics alone. The ceiling openings were drawn following the same mathematics as the human vocal cords. Gaudí studied how sound travels inside the body to understand how to make it travel inside stone. Structure, light, sound, all calculated as a single system. It wasn't a cathedral, it was an instrument. In the last 15 years of his life, Gaudí turned down every other project. He lived on the construction site itself, slept on a cot next to the models. In June 1926, he left for one of his daily walks to the church of Sant Felip Neri. He was struck by a tram 3 blocks from the site. Nobody recognized him. His clothes were too simple. A common carriage was called to take him to the public hospital, where he died. When his identity was confirmed, Barcelona stopped. It was the largest funeral the city had seen in decades. He was buried in the crypt of the work itself. The man who designed everything became a permanent part of the building he never finished. What he left behind was irreplaceable. Plaster models refined over years. Geometric fragments that none of his assistants knew how to fully decipher. 10 years later, the Civil War reached Barcelona. In July 1936, militias stormed the Sagrada Família and set the atelier on fire. The rope models, the original drawings, the handwritten calculations, everything turned to ash within hours. What remained were shards, pieces of plaster with no context, low-resolution photographs, a few scattered notes that no one quite knew how to interpret. For decades, construction continued in the dark. The architects who took over worked from interpretations, trying to reconstruct the intentions of a man dead for 40 years. In the 2000s, a team began treating these fragments like fossils. They photographed every millimeter, used photogrammetry to digitally reconstruct what the fire had destroyed. What they found confirmed something unsettling. Gaudí wasn't creating shapes by artistic intuition. He used a geometric grammar so rigorous that the fragments fit together like DNA, with the code deciphered and CNC cutting machines translating geometry into stone with millimeter precision. Construction accelerated exponentially. It took 80 years to build the first 20%. The last 30 were raised in under 15. Today, the panels are manufactured off-site with a tolerance of 1 millimeter. If a panel arrives 1 millimeter off-center, the error accumulates to nearly 8 inches by the top of the tower. For 144 years, not a single cent from any government or the Vatican funded this work. Every stone was paid for by a visitor, a donor, an anonymous believer. It is the longest-running crowdfunding project in human history. In February 2026, the Tower of Jesus Christ was completed. 566 feet tall, the tallest church in the world. At the top, a 56-foot cross, clad in glass and ceramic, lit from within, visible from the entire Catalan coastline like a lighthouse. For centuries, Ulm Cathedral in Germany held the title of tallest church in the world. In 2026, Gaudí surpassed it by 36 feet. With a tower calculated in the 19th century, Gaudí died in 1926. The tower was completed in 2026. Exactly 100 years separate the man's funeral from the completion of the most ambitious work he left behind. 100 years for technology to catch up to the imagination of a man who designed with ropes and a mirror. The Sagrada Família is not just a cathedral, not just a work of art. It is proof that some ideas are too large for a single lifetime. He once said his client was in no hurry. He was right. It took 144 years, but the work came out exactly as he calculated. Physics tried to stop it. Fire tried to erase it. Time tried to win. The stone remained. The code remained. The light remained. Gaudí didn't build for his generation. He built for every generation that came after. And every generation that came after built for him. If this video found you, hit like. It means the world to the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. The next structure is even more impossible.